Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppen. And if it's your first time here, welcome in. This is a show where we're trying to take a journalistic look at all things cannabis. Lots of cannabis podcasts and publications and everything out there, rightfully taking note as this green frontier is shifting right before our eyes every day. States in the U.S., as well as countries around the world, are legalizing cannabis medicinally and for adult recreational use. And more and more are joining the ranks of legal territories all the time. And it's very, very exciting. And that equates, when these things change, it's equating to new laws, new policies, new businesses, new people involved. And we're trying to catalog all of that and just take note of it right here on the Cannabis Man podcast. I like to speak to people who are in the space, whether that's an entrepreneur, somebody who's come up with a new product or service related to cannabis, and they're bringing it to you, to all of us consumers, or if it's a government official who's running one of these new state cannabis offices, who's responsible for the policies, the laws, enforcing standards on businesses. I like talking with them to see how the different states are going about handling some of these issues, solving problems that crop up, as well as scientists, doctors, university professors, people who are studying it as it becomes legalized more and are trying to answer the questions that we all have about cannabis. You know, how harmful is it if you're smoking every day? Is it possible to become addicted to cannabis? How many edibles are too many? You know, tolerance, where does that come into play? All of these questions that we've all had, researchers now are slowly trying to dig into them. And as this continues to roll forward, we are going to get more answers to those questions. And on that score, I have a great interview for you today. I spoke with somebody who's involved with the U.S. Cannabis Council, lives and works in D.C. right on Capitol Hill, and they are also taking part in a new political action committee known as Legalize America. The whole goal of Legalize America is to bring the fight to legalize cannabis right to Capitol Hill, to do what other industries do, like big pharma, big tobacco, alcohol, the gun lobbyists, what these industries do in order to maintain laws that are friendly to their businesses. They are there. They have a presence on Capitol Hill. They take these senators out to lunch and they make sure they know how important it is that these policies, whatever bills are being considered, either pass or don't pass because of how it relates to that company's goals. Well, Legalize America is attempting to bring those same tactics to legalizing cannabis and that debate and trying to make Congress see how important it is. So that's a great interview. I'll be playing that later in this episode. I've also got some news to get to you. I always talk about some news stories, some events as well related to cannabis, and there's been a lot of buzz, a lot of topics that I want to get to on that front as well. I've also been smoking on some new cannabis, and I've been trying my hand at reviewing some of this, getting a little more detailed with my reviews. I want to share with you all the details that I can because, as you may have heard on my last interview with High Times Mark Kazanek, we were talking about how important it is to elevate the critiques of cannabis. It's not enough to simply say, wow, this got me high and I passed out on the couch. It's like that's fine. It's not bad. You know, that can be good, product and all that, but look at, look at the art form that criticism has become in terms of movies or music or paintings or anything else. And then also alcohol and food and other consumables that we all enjoy. The level of critique is a lot further along than we have developed in this cannabis space. And so in light of the High Times Cannabis Cup that's out right now and all the judging that's been going on for different products, I've decided to try and up my own game in terms of what I'm reviewing, and I've got some flower to talk with you about that I'm very excited to share those thoughts that I have with you on that topic as well. So without further ado, let's get into the episode of the Cannabis Man podcast.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis Broadcast.
Yeah, there we are. That's the theme created by my man Yusu Kim, aka Good Son. You can find his music at I Am a Good Son on Instagram. He tours around the Midwest and usually puts out some new singles on his social media. And I just always want to thank Yusu because I love that theme so much. Puts me right in the mood to smoke, and I hope it puts you in the mood to listen to some conversation about cannabis. And on that note, I wanted to start this episode by getting to my strain of the week. That's the strain of cannabis that I've been smoking on, and this week it's a strain and a brand that I have not tried before. It's marketed as a premium brand of flower under the Cresco Labs umbrella of brands. I'm sure you've seen Cresco products at your dispensary. Some of the flower just says Cresco Labs right on the front. High Supply is also some of their stuff. Good Times, the edibles, Wonder. There's a lot of brands under their umbrella, and this brand is FloraCal Farms. I've not tried this. It's marketed as a premium craft cannabis flower, FLORACAL. And FloraCal Farms, it always looked interesting to me, but for whatever reason, I just sort of never tried it. And I want to thank Cresco Labs for sending me some of this so that I could try it out and review it and give you my thoughts right here. I'm going to be speaking with some people at Cresco to talk more about their products. They have some new edibles coming out at the end of the month, and we'll be talking about those. Very excited to share that with you. But right now, this strain of the week, it is a sativa. The FloraCal Farms flower I've been smoking is known as Astro Pop. Love the name. Makes me think kind of some space dancing, something like that. But it's a nice uplifting sativa, and I'll give you some of the details here. The THCA, the average here, 27.25%, kind of in my sweet spot between 20 and 30. It's where I typically like to go. The harvest date was June 26th. I'm recording this August 30th, so just a little over 2 months ago, this flower was harvested, and it was packaged on August 2nd. So very much within my comfortable range of when I like the harvest date, anytime within the last 3 months from when I'm smoking it, 3-4 months really. Anything beyond that, you kind of want to avoid. I've mentioned that on the show before. We got to normalize. If a bud tender, when they bring you your product at the desk, at the dispensaries, look at the harvest date, ask them what it is before they put it in the bag. And if it's more than 4 months old, ask for something fresher, ask for something newer, because we need to normalize not getting ourselves, old, tainted flower, which I'm not saying that happens, certainly not at the sunny side that I've gotten to, but I've heard plenty of people tell stories that they've gotten old product at dispensaries, and it's just a practice I want to try and normalize. So pay attention to your harvest dates, and if it's beyond 4 months, don't hesitate to ask for something newer. That's fine. Anyway, as I said, 27.25 THCA. This is an eighth of the Astro Pop. The total cannabinoids per package they give is about 27.68. So on to my thoughts about Astro Pop here. It's very earthy. When I first cracked into the jar itself, that was the notes that I first took away. The earth notes, earthy upon opening the jar, as well as smoking it. I get an earthy smell and taste. That is the top sensation that I've gotten. Also, though, on the smell, a little mentholy, a little just a little sort of almost minty tinge to that earthiness. Fresh, moist, and I also wanted to say I get a little bit of cheese almost. Not strong. This is not one of those like stinky cheese strains of weed, but as I continue to smell and smoke it, there was a little bit of like an aftertaste of sort of a white cheese, not moldy, not like a blue cheese, but more like a Gouda, more like maybe a Munster or something like that. When I was breaking it apart, I found it to be fuzzy, but not sticky, not crumbly. It was not dry. It did not break apart easily, but it was not sticky, and it did not leave residue on my fingers as I broke it apart, which I found to be nice. As I said, I mentioned the harvest date. It's fresh enough, and the fuzz is there. I'll share a picture of this. It's got some dark-colored notes to the buds itself. As I hold it under the light here, I'm getting some mostly orange and some frosty green, but I also have some dark-tinged parts, some almost purple tints to some of the buds here. So anyway, I found this Astropop to be delightful. I found the sativa to be uplifting, but not at all jittery. And that's some of the stuff we've talked about before on the show. I, listener, am a huge proponent of sativas. I tend to lean more toward the uplifting. I like to get stuff done, usually when I'm smoking. And as I've mentioned, I haven't been smoking all day, every day as of late. But, that is something that I've done in the past. It's something I'm sure I'll do in the future. Point being, I need sometimes to maintain my productivity when I imbibe cannabis. And so that's why I tend to lean towards sativas. I find the euphoria, the uplifting creative energy very, very nice. And that was consistent. I found the experience with Astropop here to be exactly that sort of vibe that I'm looking for. It's not jittery. It's been a fun, uplifting high, mostly when I've imbibed. The other night, I smoked a little bit, and my wife and I went out to a place here in Edgewater, Moody's Pub, and got ourselves some dinner, had a beer, and it was a lovely summer night, and I found myself, as we walked around, I found myself in a great mood, completely, just sort of approachable, conversational, talking with people, open for whatever, and, there was no unpleasant sensation. I didn't feel any antisocial tendencies. I didn't feel, sort of sometimes how you can feel, I think, with, when you imbibe cannabis heavily. It's sometimes you don't feel like going outside. Sometimes you don't feel like being social. You feel more like, maybe just gripping the couch and throwing a movie on and just not really dealing with people. That's not how I felt with this. I felt the opposite. I felt very socially engaging. I felt like I was just sort of enjoying life. I felt like I was kind of walking on air. And this has set me up to have some fun, wonderful evenings. And so I just want to recommend Astropop to you, listener of FloraCal Farms, a Cresco Lab product. And I guess I just want to hammer home before I move on here that this is they market it as a premium craft cannabis brand here. And I myself, I've stuck more to the, I usually look for sales. I haven't really gone out of my way to buy premium or infused or, really, really high level stuff. I just sort of find a price point that works for me. But I am now sort of changed my mind on this FloraCal stuff, at least Astropop anyway. I have a few other FloraCal flowers that I'm going to try, and I'll give you my review on those. But this Astropop is a very fun sativa, perfect for a summer night activity. And if you've got a party to go to, or if you've got some friends coming over, or just whatever you're doing as we move toward the end of summer here, Labor Day this weekend, we're really running up on fall. But if you've got some social events, I can't recommend Astropop from FloraCal enough. I found it to be very, very pleasant, and I'll definitely be getting more of it. Yeah, there it is again, earthy, minty, and a little bit of almost cheese on the very back end of it. But I like it very much, and I'm sure you will too. But let me know your thoughts. Always reach out to the show at C-Man Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. You can email me, host@cannabismanpodcast.com. Listener, welcome back. I have an excellent guest to speak with today. Real treat for you. There is a new movement happening in America, a movement you're very familiar with, the movement to legalize cannabis. And finally, there is some real efforts to make changes, policy changes at a political level federally, and that's something that you and I know is incredibly important to move legal cannabis forward in the United States. There's a new political action committee called Legalize America. And Legalize America is committed to ending cannabis prohibition and advancing expungement efforts and responsible use. They say they'll use all available tools, including scorecards, endorsements, and targeted independent expenditure campaigns to advance reform with the goal of creating a prosperous and equitable cannabis industry. And here to talk about Legalize America is the Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at the U.S. Cannabis Council and previous Leader of Government Relations at Canopy Growth, David Culver. Welcome, David.
Thanks so much. It's great to be with you, and thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Great pleasure. And I'm so excited. I was so thrilled to learn about Legalize America. I've been, doing the show for a little while now, and everybody I speak with, there's this, understanding that as exciting as the state-by-state legalization movement is, I'm here in Illinois. Every time I see a new state like Minnesota recently add to the legal cannabis ranks, it's great, but the patchwork legalization and the federal prohibition is still incredibly problematic. And so having a group like Legalize America who's trying to make these changes at that level is really exciting. Can you tell us a little about the group and what you guys are working on?
Yeah, of course. And thanks for your interest in this topic and the work that you're doing and putting the spotlight on cannabis reform generally. I've been in this industry myself for 5 years, and I was at Canopy Growth, running their global government affairs for 4+, and I've been at USCC since I departed Canopy Growth earlier this year. And we are very excited about the opportunities for reform both this year and next. But Legalize America is a brainchild that many of us in the industry, especially those in the government relations space, have been talking about for a number of years. And I kind of wish, in retrospect, we had done this a long time ago. But I do think it's a really necessary and important part of the political effort that we're going to be continuing to work on this year and next. So we're very excited to have launched the nation's first cannabis super PAC. And the goal, of course, is for us to really supercharge the push for cannabis legalization, both here in Washington, D.C., where I live, and on Capitol Hill, and, of course, in state capitals, because we think that there's going to be a continued movement to expand existing state markets, but also to open new ones, both legislatively and through ballot initiatives. And the goals of USCC are the goals of Legalize America are relatively the same as the U.S. Cannabis Council. And this is really where the Legalize America incubated. We'd like to be able to create a prosperous and equitable cannabis industry, but the tools for Legalize America are going to be more specific to the politics in order, like I said earlier, to open new markets and to advance reform measures on Capitol Hill. But the simple priorities for Legalize America are really threefold, and it's ending cannabis prohibition, it's advancing expungement, and, of course, making sure that the industry is headed towards responsible use.
Right on. And I think those three things that you just mentioned, I think every, cannabis enthusiast can get behind. I think we all should be on board with those. It's a great place to start. And I am also excited that you guys are using the tools available, it sounds like at Legalize America, to influence this at the political level, where all policies are made on Capitol Hill, as you said, Washington, D.C. And it says on the website, if you're interested, listener, legalizeamerica.us. You can check out more information there. You can contribute as well, get in on this great cause. The 2024 presidential election, we're, a little over a year out from choosing a new president in the U.S., and I'm guessing that the 24 election is going to be pretty pivotal in the fight to end cannabis prohibition. There's been growing support among Americans. I think even in the states that don't have programs, I think, countrywide, more Americans than ever before support legalizing cannabis. What about the 2024 election do you believe is so pivotal in this fight? Why is this upcoming election so crucial?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think you're exactly right that the 2024 presidential is going to be an important moment in terms of cannabis reform. So let me start with the Democrats. President Biden, I think, as you know, ran on cannabis reform. He didn't take a position as strong as I think the industry would have hoped, but he did take a pro-cannabis reform position, and he acted on it, as we all know, in October of last year, directing the Health and Human Services Department and also the Department of Justice to look at where cannabis should be on schedule, among other things. And that process has been underway for since October, and we expect some sort of announcement about the intention to come out of the Health and Human Services Department before the end of the year. And then the process will continue. It has to go to the Department of Justice, and there's the White House role, et cetera. But we believe that announcement will be made before the end of this year. And of course, they will begin to move towards some sort of a reschedule, not a deschedule, but we believe it will go towards a reschedule, so move down schedule. And the White House will use this, in my opinion, for their own politics and the president's reelection going into the 2024 cycle. So if you look back at 2022, the Democrats had a really, really successful and surprising midterm election cycle. And they ran on three things. They ran on abortion, which was the biggest, I think, influencer of that cycle, democracy, which the president made that speech just prior to the 2022 elections. And a lot of people were left scratching their heads as to whether or not this would actually appeal to the American voter, and it did. And the third, of course, is cannabis. And, this goes back to the announcement that he made in October of last year. So there'll be, this will be part of the Democratic platform going into the 2024 cycle, and it's going to be something that most likely differentiates the president, President Biden, with whoever he ends up as his challenger on the Republican side. Now, the Republican side, to me, is very, very interesting. Right now, it's a very crowded field, and there's been a number of us in the government relations space that for years have tried to get this inserted or spoken about, highlighted on the Republican side. It hasn't happened to date in a positive way, that is. But there have been two candidates already that are running that have announced their intentions to run for president, that have announced pro-reform positions. And the first is Mar Suarez, who was not on the debate stage last night, but has a very strong pro-legalization position. And the second is Vivek, who I will stick with his first name only.
Right, for sure.
For my own pronunciation difficulties. He was on the stage last night, and he has taken a pro-reform position. So I think that there's opportunity still with other candidates that are not firmly entrenched in terms of being anti-reform. But I think that there's the opportunity to get to some of these other candidates that are more populist, that are going to be interested in taking a look at it, because it will play very effectively in the battleground states. It would have in 2022 if President Trump had chosen to engage, which he did not, of course. But anybody that's in the mix, I think, realizes that some of the battleground states could really be cannabis could really be helpful in terms of getting out the vote and helping them with some of the younger crowd that the current White House is looking to harness too. So both sides want that youth vote, and I think cannabis is a way to harness it.
Yeah, right on. And you bring up great points there. Thank you for kind of spelling it out that way. It really does illustrate why the 24 election is going to be pretty crucial because, as you mentioned, President Biden back in 22 already highlighted cannabis and he ran on that reform last time. And it's exciting to know that that's the sort of, that they are planning to continue on that path. But as you mentioned now, too, you've got candidates on the Republican side who are looking for support. They're looking to challenge, the former President Trump, and cannabis is clearly a way that they see a viable pathway to getting youth, to getting younger voters excited about their campaigns. And I'm excited too. I mean, just to kind of see support from candidates on both sides, to see people in the conservative space be talking about cannabis, I think is a very exciting change. And I look forward to this. David, you're on Capitol Hill, as you mentioned. You work in D.C. Something that was said by Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, recently, that he intends, after they return after this summer recess here, that safe banking, the Safe Banking Act, to bring cannabis businesses onto the federal banking system and kind of help these businesses get access to things like credit lines and make it so they don't have to just use cash for all their transactions and a whole host of headaches that they've got to deal with. What is your sense about safe banking, and do you believe that will be a priority for the returning Congress here in the fall?
Yeah, I do. I am cautiously optimistic. I've been working this bill for 5 years, and we've had a lot of fits and starts, but I do believe there is very positive momentum right now. And specifically, the Senate Banking Committee has held a hearing already this year on the Safe Banking Act, and it was a very positive hearing. There was a minor hiccup that we encountered around a certain provision within the bill that was negotiated between members during this August recess. And it's my understanding that they've come to a tentative agreement and that the bill is now ready to move forward in the committee process. So when Congress comes back after the holiday in September, we expect them to announce a Senate Banking Committee markup of the package and to move it out of the full committee, which would mean that Senator Schumer would then be able to take it after it's gone through regular order to the floor when he has an opportunity to do so. And, we're hopeful that the Senate will act on this before the end of the year. But I feel, and I've been saying this for months, that there is a window in October that I think the Senate could bring this to the floor and they could move it along. So we feel pretty good, and we certainly appreciate all the good work that all my colleagues have done here in Washington to move this along. The other trade groups, the other companies that have engaged folks in Washington, and of course, the American consumer that also is engaged in pro-cannabis messaging. So I feel pretty good about it. It's then got to go to the House, and the House is a very different animal. And even though they have passed this piece of legislation 7 times, and of course it's always stalled in the Senate will act first this time, and then we're going to have to deal with the House. And the dynamic there this year is very different, and we're going to have to spend a lot of time really educating on the bill and the importance of passing it, because it is a public safety issue, and one that the members on the House side have tackled repeatedly and in a bipartisan and positive way. So we feel pretty good about where we're headed. I'm going to caveat all this by saying that the government shutdown and the impeachment of President Biden are both coming in the month of September. I feel very confident saying that, and these are, depending on your political preference, they are, I think, unfortunate, especially the government shutdown. It's going to make it very difficult for legislative efforts to follow through and to move along. But we're going to have to watch it and wait and see how long it's actually going to last. But that government shutdown in particular could really throw a wrench in what we're trying to do. And we're hopeful that it's short-lived and that we can continue our business and get them back to work.
Wow, that's kind of a big bombshell at the end there, David. I didn't realize that there was an impending government shutdown. I anchor news on GN. Like I'm not super plugged into politics nationally, but I try and keep my finger on the pulse, at least generically, of it. And I haven't seen what is, if you can. I mean, I'm sure that there's multiple. I'm sure it's multifaceted, but if you can, what is at the core of this impending shutdown? What do you think is going to grind everything to a halt here?
I mean, there's all sorts of different perspectives as to why this will ultimately happen. But I do think that there are members on the Democratic side and on the Republican side that believe this would actually work in their favor if the government does shut down. And by work in their favor, I mean their own politics going into the 2024 election cycle. So I, of course, could be wrong, and I hope that I am wrong. That they don't shut the government down. I'd never like to see that happen. I'd never like to see it in my 25 plus years here in Washington. But I do think it's very real for September, and something that those of us that are trying to advance legislation are going to have to deal with.
Gotcha. Yeah, totally understand that. And I like I said, I get it. It's multifaceted. There's a lot of different competing interests in Washington, and I understand it's, inherently political that way. So that would be unfortunate. I totally agree. I don't think anybody's happy when the government shuts down the American people. Nobody likes to see it, especially you working in D.C. too. It's just can't get anything done that way. The other question I had is the impeachment of President Biden. You mentioned that you believe that that's coming as well. Do you know what the issue at the center of that would be? What would impeachment charges be brought against the president for?
Well, that's a good question. And nobody has actually specified what they're going to be bringing in terms of the charges. There's a whole host of things that the Oversight and Government Reform Committee has been looking into for quite some time. And you can go back and look at many of the press releases and hearings that they've held related to the president and the president's son. I think you'll see the focus of the impeachment claim around the work that committee has done. But again, I would only be speculating, and I don't know for sure what they're gonna focus on. What I do know is that it's coming, and it's going to be something that they attempt to put as a cloud over the current president as he gets into election cycle.
Gotcha. Well, that is, as you said, important to note. It is speculation. We'll see what does happen. Nobody knows the future, but I appreciate you kind of voicing, just giving us the pulse from your reading where you're sitting on Capitol Hill there. David Culver, really appreciate you jumping on. One more question here, just as Legalize America is working to make members of the House, understand what an important issue this is, and hopefully approaching, as you said, that period of October where maybe there's an opportunity to bring a vote to this. I just want to ask you, in your opinion, how can people who want to support Legalize America, how can they best get involved? What should they be doing?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question because it is important for us to harness the voice of the cannabis consumer and the cannabis supporter across the country. I'm here in D.C. I'm up on Capitol Hill all day, every day, talking to members and talking to staff. And my voice is important, but the American consumer's voice is equally important. So I would just urge everybody that is a cannabis consumer to start to look for Legalize America in the dispensaries where you're purchasing your product. We are getting ready to launch a roundup campaign in a test group of dispensaries in New Jersey. Through one brand, and we're going to, make sure the water runs through the pipes properly as we do it. And once we succeed, and we believe that we will, we're going to be launching a nationwide campaign. And ideally, I'd like to see Legalize America in every dispensary across the country and give the American consumer an opportunity to use a small piece of their funding, so rounding up their change, to put into the political coffers that we're going to be using to help expand markets and access for those that need cannabis, and of course, trying to end the federal-state conflict and ultimately end the war on drugs. So that would be number one. Number two, just more generally, for those of you that would like to engage politically, you can always reach out to me through U.S. Cannabis Council, through Legalize America website. And it's important for your voice to be heard. You can contact your two senators and your member of Congress from your state and let them know that you'd like to see cannabis reform enacted federally, and you'd like to see the war on drugs ended. So the more they hear from you, the better. And I always encourage folks across the country that do believe in cannabis reform to engage politically. So thank you for the question.
Oh, of course. And thank you, David Culver, Senior Vice President of Public Affairs at the U.S. Cannabis Council and working with Legalize America. You've given us some really great information and some great tips there. Listener, as you heard it, contact your representative, man. You can call the senators, you can call the reps, and let them know that you want this cannabis prohibition ended. And head to legalizeamerica.us if you feel like getting involved in the work that they're doing, because it's important stuff, and they're fighting this battle people on the front lines in D.C. on Capitol Hill trying to end this thing one day at a time. So thank you so much, David Culver, and I hope we can talk again in the future.
I would love it. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Take care.
You too.
And there you have it, listener. I just want to thank my guest one more time, David Culver of the U.S. Cannabis Council and Legalize America. You can check out what they're doing at legalizeamerica.us. Before I let you go, listener, some news came out earlier today. Again, August 30th, I'm recording this. Extremely exciting news. We've all been waiting for it. Talk of rescheduling cannabis is finally happening here. The Department of Health and Human Services, there's word, it came out earlier today, and I'm citing Bloomberg with this report here. They mentioned that a top official at the DHHS wrote Drug Enforcement Agency Administrator Ann Milgram calling for marijuana to be reclassified as a Schedule III drug under the Controlled Substances Act. This letter was dated August 29th, and again, Bloomberg News cites seeing it themselves. As they go on to say, it's a critical shift from its current status as Schedule 1. Don't need to be reminded of that. We are all well aware. And listener, I know that upon hearing this, you must have been just as excited as I was. And we should be celebrating. You should be celebrating. Shout it from the rooftops. This thing is going to finally come off the Schedule 1 substance list. The gravity of this move cannot be overstated. This is a massive historic moment in the United States. This is history. When they remove this from Schedule 1 and they put it on Schedule 3, the difference is enormous. We're talking again, a baseline of Schedule 1 is high potential for abuse, low or no medicinal value. And we know that that's obviously, not the case. With cannabis, it's been, incorrect forever. And Schedule 3, I just went through the list of what's on there. And some of the other Schedule 3 substances in the U.S. include testosterone, acetaminophen, caffeine, codeine, aspirin. So those kinds of over-the-counter, substances that, a lot of us imbibe every single day without giving much thought to, that's the Schedule 3. That's where cannabis is going to be now, finally. And, if descheduling's never going to happen, which it may not, for me, Schedule 3 is a fine place to be. I really don't have any qualms with this. Again, I want to talk with somebody soon, hopefully, to understand this a little better. I'll bring you that interview when I can. So we'll get some more details here. And I do want to know, and if you understand it, listener, please contact me. Again, host at cannabismanpodcast.com and at cmanpodcast on all the social channels. So I'm so thrilled. This was such a massive announcement that I don't think any of us were expecting at this time. As David and I were talking about, safe banking was kind of on the forefront. I was thrilled, to kind of hear him say that he believes that really does have a great chance of passing. So there's a lot that we can look forward to here in the next year. And as David said as well, the 2024 presidential election is going to be pivotal. I think just seeing this news right now and talking of safe banking and how all of this is going to be moving in the next 6 months to a year to 18 months when we finally do get, the next president into the office here, whoever that is going to be that's going to play the biggest role in whether all of this actually gets done. And if we see the real change that we're hoping to see regarding cannabis and the normalization of using it in our day-to-day lives in 2023 and beyond. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. As I said, I will be bringing somebody on the show who can talk more about, how huge this is and whatnot. But it's a very exciting time, say it on the show all the time. This is, it's a great time to be alive, and it's a wonderful time, the best time in a long time for cannabis enthusiasts. And this day that we've all been looking forward to, it is fast approaching. And the thing we got to do, the thing we still got to work on is just killing that stigma, that lingering negative sentiments that people have about cannabis and marijuana because of the propaganda of the 20th century that we talk about all the time. And so in whatever way you can help kill that stigma, by all means do it. And I'm going to be banging the drum right here and continuing to do so on my end as well. And that's the fight we got to fight, because this is important, and it's just great to see some real movement. These are the results of a lot of great people fighting for a long, long time, and we're finally seeing some real important changes here, and boy, does it feel good. I hope you're enjoying it too. So light up, blaze on, and enjoy, celebrate this great news, and we'll talk again next week. Remember to support the show. Click on the link in the description notes if you like what's going on here. Anything you can offer is very, very much appreciated. And we'll talk again next week on the Cannabis Man Podcast. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Good Son.